Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode. Today we hear from Darren Mooney, Creative Director and Founder of design agency Global Brand Communications. Darren started Global at age just 22, and the agency recently entered its 25th year of operation. As any successful founder or business owner will know, this incredible achievement and longevity is the result of very hard work and a lot of sacrifices along the way. Also, typical of most entrepreneurial journeys, Darren's path has been met with some dizzying highs as well as some difficult lows, from both a professional and a personal perspective. But what's not typical of most entrepreneurial journeys is that it was preceded by the possibility of Darren becoming a professional footballer. I've known Darren for quite a while, and I count Darren as a friend, and I've always enjoyed his positive energy as well as his candour and honesty. His story is a compelling one, and I was really pleased to be able to get him on the show to hear about where he's been, where he's at now, but also importantly, where is he headed. Amongst other things, Darren talks about the influence his father and his uncle had on his entrepreneurial ambitions, how spending part of his childhood in Sweden influenced him, how being captain of a football team has honed his managerial skills, the ability to adapt to disruption as an independent business, the challenges of commercial divorce, and the effects of being an entrepreneur on his personal life. It's one of those great conversations, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Darren, welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you, Warren. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on the podcast. Really interested to learn a bit more about, we know each other well, but really interested to learn a bit more about your story and probably those early days. And I suppose let's just start from there, Darren. Do you think you were, obviously you run the Global Group now, successful design company and media company, but were you always destined to run your own business?
Interesting one, Warren. Thanks, really. The kind of story begins at 16 for me, really, when I had this really difficult choice to make. I was, loved football. I was at AFC Bournemouth, and and Exeter City have just kind of offered me a contract to go down there and kind of start my essentially what would be like a pro career in football, and I loved it. But I also had a really yearning for being a designer, and kind of influence from my uncle in America. He had an amazing life. He left the UK in the kind of late 60s and just happened to fall into the whole Silicon Valley boom. He was an artist and was in a bar in San Francisco, funny enough, and basically he was sat next to a guy who was having a drink, and the classic kind of on a beer mat story, and he ended up designing the first logo for Symantec on a beer mat in a bar in San Francisco, right. and then basically they grew and grew and grew, and then they recommended him, and he had an amazing life and drove an Alfa Romeo over the Golden Gate Bridge every day, and had literally Steve McQueen Bullet was his offices on the middle of the hill in San Francisco, and he had a beautiful house in the Napa Valley, and so I kind of had that as an influence on my life, as well as my dad being a pro footballer. And
wow. Two big influences in an early stage of your life then. Two people you were looking up to. And
100%, and me and my brother were kind of influenced both, really, and my brother ended up going into a different direction, but my dad's, football was a very different game back then, and my dad was a great a great player. He signed for Bournemouth. That's why we moved from London.
This was sort of early 90s, late 80s,
So
early 90s.
funny enough, they've got a reunion at AFC Bournemouth in a couple of weeks for the I think it's the 81-82 team where they got promotion from the 3rd to the 4th division, and you know, my dad's was, I think he was in his late 20s then, and unfortunately broke his leg, and you know, and this is where I love him a bit, you know, and actually it's not until you get a bit older that you realise how brave the decision was. But the kind of English season finished, and he was just getting fit at that point to play again, and he decided to go to Norway and Sweden to get fit. You know, it was only supposed to be for a season, and we ended up being there 2 years. So I kind of got plucked out of junior school.
So how old were you? So you're junior school age?
Yeah, so I was 8 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and then kind of literally dropped in a Swedish school where no one spoke English, and they were just learning English, thankfully. So that made my life a little bit easier. Yeah. But kind of going back to the question, I saw my dad in his, you know, kind of very early 30s, not really have a fullback career to kind of look at, and you know, thankfully I had the wisdom to kind of think, well, I didn't really want to, you know, as much as I love and respect his career as a footballer, I didn't want to be in that position, you know, at 30 and then wondering what I'm going to do. So thankfully I chose to go to art college. AUB offered me a place. At the same time, Exeter City and AFC Bournemouth offered me, you know, what was back then like YTS contracts.
That's a crossroads in life at an early stage.
100%. You know, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously spoke to my dad about it. I spoke to my uncle, and they were both, you know, whilst they could never make the decision for me, they were both, you know, actually, ironically, you know, my uncle was like, if you choose design, you can come, you know, when you graduate, come work with me, and I'll teach you everything I know, you know. But he said, you've got an opportunity to be a footballer. And whereas my dad said, you know, obviously, if you want to be a footballer, I'll back you. But he said, if I was you, I'd go to America, you know, and live the life that your uncle's got. You know? So it was interesting. Both them kind of influenced me massively. But thankfully, I chose to go to art college, and ended up playing, you know, semi-pro for a long time.
So you sort of had the best of both worlds in a way.
Yeah, it was great. You know, everyone was working in bars, you know, at art college, and I was playing football twice a week and getting paid for the pleasure. It became a bit difficult when everyone was going out on a Friday night, and I couldn't go out, you know, as heavily as they were, let's just say. But it gave me a lot of skills that, you know, I now appreciate, you know, and thankfully I kind of managed to stay relatively injury-free, and learned an awful lot of my management skills through football. You know, if you can control a football team as a captain, you can control a team of business people.
That's an interesting, we should explore. So do you think there is a strong analogy there between being a captain of a sporting team and leading a business?
Oh, 100%, without fail. You know, my management experiences come from, you know, when you're managing a football team, or actually, you know, when I was actually captain of you know, when I got a bit older and a bit more experience, it's knowing who you've got to go and put your arm around and you know, gently whisper and, you know, give them a pat on the back, and knowing who you've got to sometimes drag to one side and kind of let loose on, you know, and that's kind of what kind of hones your management skills, and also, you know, appreciating how to talk to people differently, you know, and taking, you know, advice and taking orders is the wrong word from your manager, but, you know, kind of being told how to do stuff and listening and learning. 100%. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't, you know, kind of played football and kind of learnt that. So
you learnt those creative skills, chose the creative career, went to the university in Bournemouth, the Arts University. When did you ultimately start your business then?
Well, I kind of graduated from AUB, so I went straight from school. So I was just over 19 when I left AUB, and my uncle said, look, when you graduate, give me a call and head to California. And
so he fulfilled on that promise, did he?
He literally did. He said, you know, and I was grateful for that. And my auntie was in San Francisco, and I kind of spent just over a year living with both of them, really.
Okay.
But the kind of big turning point, you know, I'd met my partner and kind of the mother of my child, Kate, 3 months before I went to San Francisco.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be a quick thing, and I was basically going to live in America forever, and ended up spending about $1,000 on phone calls, and she came and stayed, and I'm very grateful for that, because I've got a beautiful son called Alfie, and he's 12 now, and if we hadn't have had that relationship, and she was a massive influence in Global in the early days, supporting me, and we'll kind of touch on that a bit later on, but yeah, so I ended up, and actually I miss my friends. I think I always say if I didn't live in Bournemouth, I would still be in California now. You could surf down at Santa Cruz, you could drive up to Tahoe and ski in a day if you wanted to. It was incredible, and I coached soccer and kind of lived the life. But I remember my friends saying, "What are you doing coming back?" And it was because I missed them. I think from the age of like 14 to 20, kind of 5 or 6 of us were a really tight group of lads that we all played football for the same team and grew up together, and I genuinely just got to the point where I missed my mates and missed Bournemouth as a whole, and your family. So I decided to come back. But before I left, my uncle said to me, he said, "I've got a present for you." And this is where Global really started, was that he gave me this massive beige box of a Mac. It was his first ever kind of Apple Mac back in the day, and a monitor. And he said, "Look, you can obviously pay for it to get home, but you can have it." And at this point it was worth quite a few quid. So I never forget it. I was walking through, obviously come out Heathrow the other end with this massive beige box of a monitor and an Apple Mac, and then kind of had it, and it gave me the skills that I use today, and that's really how Global started. And I came back, and I remember being in some people will remember the Artful Dodger in Bournemouth. And a good friend of mine, one of the kind of groups, he's just sort of said, "Look, what are you doing?" I said, "I've just come back from America, and I've learned a lot about design." And he went, "Oh, I quite fancy doing a design business. People ask me for design work all the time." He said, "Do you want to start something?" And as all good businesses tend to do, they start in a pub. In a pub. We were underage drinking a pint in the Artful Dodger, and that was it. And I remember talking to my mum and dad and said, "Look, I'm going to start my own business." And I think at this point I was, 20, No, so 21 I would have been. And
so your only ever employed role was with your uncle?
Well, I came back and worked part-time and a bit for a print company over in basically Global. So I kind of was always running Global,
but effectively your skills in running a business and what you've seen
100%
completely self-developed. Because a lot of I suppose I'm an example, kind of learned some of those skills working in corporate life, and then at 29 30 went, right, I'm going to go and do it for myself. You had that spirit in you from an early age. And Ben, we're not business partners anymore, essentially, in the design agency, but he taught me a lot, and one of the questions on here is that, what do you think you need to do more of? And actually, I probably need to be a bit more ruthless. I tend to be the guy that tries to keep everyone as friends and do things the right way, and I think probably you need to be a little bit more ruthless in business, but I learned a lot from Ben, to be fair, and Global wouldn't be the business it was today if it hadn't been for him. So that was a good, strong partnership between you as the creative, Ben as the sort of ideas and
100%. He ran the business and ran the clients, and I did the design work, and I trusted him implicitly, and he did the same for me. And we stayed as a partnership for 12 years, I think it was, which is a long time, especially when we were in our early 20s. But I was working at a company called, which ended up being Marquee Print over in Westbourne, and kind of running Global on the side, and we were getting busier and busier, and people started to say, "Can we come and have a look at stuff on screen?" And I was thinking, "Oh my God, my mum and dad are going to try and make him a cup of tea and some lunch when they come out." So we thought, no, we better try and do this properly and make that leap of kind of being employed. And thankfully, as I say to any young entrepreneur that I get to meet, I said, the sooner you start your business, the better it is, because the less burden you've got and the less you've got to risk, because I was living at home,
Absolutely.
you know, and I didn't have a lot to put on the line.
When I started out, there was just me, Michaela. There was no kids.
Yeah,
there was
exactly.
we had a
It
mortgage,
makes things a
but
bit easier.
Michaela had a job, and it didn't feel like a risk at all, because
No.
you can always go back and find a
100%.
job, find an income.
Yeah.
The longer you leave it, sometimes, the harder it is, because you have life's responsibilities. And I think when you're carefree, and you've got a different sense of energy, haven't you? So you make these
100%.
bolder decisions.
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. You become quite flippant about things, which is
dangerous.
Yeah,
as well.
to a degree, yeah. And that's why it's always good to, you know, I kind of respect these people that have done it on their own and not had partners, because you know, you have these conversations. Sometimes they were quite heated. You know, I believed strongly that we wanted to do something, and Ben would be the polar opposite. You know, and we'd end up talking it out, and one way or another, we'd end up thankfully in the right decision. But yeah, so we ended up kind of making our name doing pub and club flyers. For most of the bars that we all kind of grew up in, really. To Ben's frustration, we never really got paid any cash, but we ate and
Free
drank.
tickets at the door.
We literally ate and drank for 10 years in Bournemouth at a time when we were in our kind of early 20s, and we thankfully got our name on all the flyers that we did, and it was probably the best marketing that we could have done as a business, you know. And a lot of those people now are in kind of commercial roles, and you know, they're all a little bit older, and we're still friends with most of them, you know. And we did kind of bump and hustle branding and flyers for years, you know, and those guys and Bob and that's still friends, you know.
So they sound like great times. You sound like you're having good times. You and Ben were in business partnership together. Was there a point, as you then in those early years, where you were working part time, that you decided we're going to really take this seriously? Or did it just morph and evolve and the business grow?
It kind of organically grew, but it kind of got to a point where we were working every evening and every weekend, you know, and it became feasible for us to go, actually, you know, we want to have a go at this. And I ended up kind of going part-time, really, leaving Marquee Print and going part-time in a kind of what was a repro graphics company then. So it just meant I could work, you know, less hours and again, learn a little bit more about the design and print industry. But it's interesting, you know, kind of business influences. Two people that kind of really helped me through that early journey was when I left Marquee, you know, Martin said, you know, anything you need, just keep in contact. I'll help you as much as I can, you know, respect to you going out and doing it on your own. I did it. I never regretted it, you know. And then I went to the repro company and I kind of went part-time there for about 6 months. And when I sort of said, look, I'm going to do global full-time now, the guy that owned that there then went, it's going to be the hardest thing you'll ever do. You'll never be able to play football, and you know it will take over your life. And to some respects, he's actually quite true. But you know, it was that complete polar opposites of advice, and you know, someone who actually genuinely loves what they're doing, and someone who obviously doesn't. You know. Yeah. So, but thankfully we did it, and you know, I remember our first office in Holderness Road. We rented it off Lee Bolson's dad, funny enough. He had a lot of property, and it was above an offer license, and we kind of fueled the first years of Global on you know, boosts and bags of crisps and cans of Coke.
Sugar rushing.
Yeah,
not the best nutrition
was.
for you
no,
now.
No, 100%. My life is slightly different these days. But yeah, and it was great. You know, we loved it. We worked hard and we were working for ourselves, and you know, we had a great life. And as I say, we went out in Bournemouth and everyone knew us, and you know, we got in at most bars and clubs because we were doing the work and they owed us a load of money. So it was quite hard for them to say you couldn't come in. So it's quite good.
And when did you start building a team then? Because up to this point, it's you, it's Ben, you're in this together, you're building the business. But, you know, Global soon then gained some momentum, didn't it? And the team grew. So
it did, yeah. And it was interesting because I kind of found my feet a little bit and became very confident. And I loved going out and taking briefs and talking to clients. And, you know, as most people in the design industry know, that it's hard to do that and then go back and do the work. You know, and present the work, and you know, because while you're out there, there's more work building up, and we made that brave decision that actually it wasn't just going to be me and Ben as a partnership anymore, that we needed really to take on a designer, and we did that in Holderness Road, and that was really probably where it became serious as as most people that start their own business. The minute they become responsible for somebody else's life, that kind of changes things.
It's a wake up call.
It really is, yeah. And we employed a guy called Lee. He was great. Funny enough, from one of the businesses that I worked, he'd already left and went somewhere else, and we stayed in contact. But yeah, I remember we kind of then had to kind of move to a bigger office, and I remember saying to Ben that there's no way we can afford 150 quid a month on an office, and Ben was like, I reckon we can do it. At this point we weren't getting hardly any wages, and now we spend that on tea and coffee at Global. It's just, it's crazy. The kind of, I remember, I never forget it, we were sat in a cafe in Holderness Road, and we just left the office, and we were looking at the numbers thinking, can we scrape together and commit to a year's worth of lease for 150 quid a month. Is crazy.
So let's accelerate, just to give the listeners a kind of benefit of where you are today. Tell us about Global as it stands today in 2022.
Global has kind of evolved a lot. We were a design for print agency, and thankfully over the years we built up a lot of great clients. Hall & Woodhouse have been a client for about 18, 19 years now, and we kind of worked with Virgin for about 13 years, and I think it's to the credit of us evolving with those businesses that for Virgin we started out doing all their internal comms, magazines, and we design and print like 6,000 magazines and distribute them all around the world, and that's how they talk to their staff. And now we do the same job, but actually we produce and post-produce videos for them. And distribute those, obviously digitally around the world to their staff. And the fact that we've been able to evolve and keep our design at a level that the likes of, kind of Virgin and Hall & Woodhouse and Molson Coors kind of come to us for that sort of stuff is, it's incredible, really incredible. And it goes back to that kind of resilience, but also bravery to evolve, and to kind of see what's coming around the corner. And it kind of goes back in and touches on the fact that we Ben and I struggled at times, as we became a little bit older and kind of less kind of less easy to kind of change and go in different directions, and thankfully I kind of saw the fact that we did need to go into a digital world, and print wasn't going to be the thing forever, so yeah.
So there's a few things there, isn't there? I suppose, how do we talk about them both, but one is around disruption that's happening in most industries, but that, you've touched on that, it's happening in yours. So let's deal with that one first. And then I'd like to talk about client retention and client delight. So, but let's do the disruption piece. So how do you cope? You're a successful agency, but you are an independent agency. How do you cope with the advances in technology and the changes in market? Because in the design and print world, that, it hasn't just evolved, has it? It's morphing all the time, different content. Is it social? Is it physical? Is it, what technology are you using to do this? Are you producing videos? What quality they are? And you've got to keep up to date with all of that. How do you go about doing that as an independent business?
I think it's for me, it's always, kind of seeing, almost trying to have that crystal ball, and seeing what great things are out there and what the kind of leading companies are doing, the music industry, and sort of seeing how they're doing stuff, and then thinking, actually, how can we bring that into our agency? But also it's that kind of brave, visionary, almost, I'm not going to say cavalier, because it's not, every decision that you kind of make as a business owner, you process, and going back to a great bit of advice that a good friend gave to me, Les Parodi, was like, trust your gut. He said, your gut is the final thing, it's your body and your mind processing the decision that you've got to make. And and he said to me, always trust your gut. If it feels right and you stick by that decision, you'll make it work,
So it is really interesting, because as business owners, sometimes perhaps the team look at you and think, we've made those, use the word, I'll use your cavalier decisions, but they're hardly ever cavalier, are they? You've thought them through for a long time. So that's really interesting, and good words of advice, Darren. But also that bit about following your gut. When I think about my own journey, some of the mistakes I've made is because I ignored my gut. And I think as long as you've thought it through and you've processed it and you've analysed it, then you follow your gut.
Yeah, and it's that line, isn't it, of what's the worst thing that could happen, you know, and if you can mitigate that, then you're doing all right.
Yeah.
You know, but it's also seizing the moment, you know, the kind of the split between Ben and I, which happened coming up about 4 years ago almost now, and that was hard. You know, Ben and I had known each other since we were 13 years old.
Started the business together virtually as teenagers.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, his father retired, or was going to retire, and you know, he wanted him to run the family business, which I completely get. And you know, Ben stayed as FD of Global for about 7 years. And whilst I appreciated that, it probably kept us almost static, you know, because it was hard to make the decision and be brave and bold, because I had another financial director that I had to get those decisions through, but also was slightly disconnected from A, the industry, and B, the business. So
no, clearly I've got some insight to that, but one of the things I admire about, you know, both from your perspective and Ben's, is how you manage that as a business partnership. Because it's never easy. It's like it's divorce, isn't it, effectively?
You know, 100%. It's a commercial divorce. And
so if you've got anybody that is going through that process, that is thinking of splitting the business or splitting from their business partner, got any words of advice for them? Yeah.
Don't be afraid of the numbers, you know. And it probably took us 6-7 months, or it took me 6-7 months to be brave enough to say, look, this isn't right. I want to buy you out. Put a number on a table, you know. Okay. And thankfully, we had you in the middle to help mediate. But it would have happened a lot sooner had I been brave enough to go. Okay. You know, how much are you looking for? What's it going to cost?
So have that hard question.
Yeah, and
face
it's
down
hard.
The hard questions early.
And that's, you know, same with any separation or any, you know. And as I say, it is. And the words I use is I've been through a commercial divorce, you know, and that takes its toll on you. It's a tough journey.
It's emotionally draining, isn't it?
100%.
You know, as we said about all of that long-term relationship, it's parted. You might feel confident that you believe in yourself and you're on your own, but you must have felt for a little bit slightly isolated.
100%, yeah, and also it's quite emotionally and mentally challenging. You know, I was kind of separating from Kate at the time, and I turned 45, and you know, I was kind of really evaluating my life at that point, and you know, I kind of look back on it now, and good friends and some not so good friends have told me that I was a mess for probably 18 months, you know, and you don't see it, you're in it, you're living it, you're looking out thinking I'm all right, but actually everyone's looking at you thinking, you know, this guy needs some help, and you know, what's going on, and you know, and thankfully, you know, I got recommended a wonderful lady called Becky Holston, as we all know, and I'm sure you guys are all aware, and you know, I recommended her to a good friend of mine about 3 months ago, you know, and without doubt, you know, I genuinely say that she probably saved my life, if I'm honest. You know, it's strong words, get a bit emotional when you talk about it, but yeah, she's amazing, and
she's
going
amazing.
back to that how do you manage fear and change, and you know, and it's being brave enough to go, actually I need some help and I want to talk to someone about this, and not be embarrassed about it.
As May, you know, I love Becky, and she's definitely put me on the straight and narrow on her many times, and some challenging circumstances at the moment. She's been invaluable to me personally at the moment, but as men, we don't often ask for help, do we?
No.
We see it as a sign of weakness.
For anyone listening, both Warren and I are both welling up a little bit now. So it's quite. we didn't intend to have this as a cry fest, but yeah, it's true. And actually, that goes back to that trust in your gut and process. Is that, you know, it's actually asking for help that's the hardest thing. You know, and especially as a male, and what I kind of class myself as a kind of footballer, and you know, it was like almost, you know, what you're doing, why are you going to talk to someone like that? But it was the best thing I ever did, and you know, and I would also kind of got to the point where I wasn't really playing football so much anymore, so I didn't really have that stress relief, and you know, and I think seeing the signs of you know, kind of that you're feeling stressed or you know, you can't cope with the situation is one of the biggest things, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, anyone out there that thinks they need support, then, you know, get it 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and yeah, start with Becky. She's amazing. So
brilliant. So to put us back on the straight and narrow, talking about, you know, you talked about Virgin, Hall and Woodhouse, you know, 10-year plus relationships with the business. So, you know, the subject I'm passionate about is client delight, but also client retention and building long-term relationships. And you alluded to it yourself, Darren, you know, you're in a dynamic, changing environment. So it must be even more challenging to retain clients, you know, and in a very competitive industry. So hints and tips on client retention and client delight. What have you done that has enabled those businesses to stay with you so long?
I think it goes back to the kind of be brave, and when you see talent or an opportunity, you know, seize the moment. You know, I bought Ben out, and thankfully I was in charge of the business, and I've got an amazing commercial director, you know, Sharon, who has enabled me to, you know, get to global and make it a business that is, you know, is really, really sustainable and it's got a great future. And a guy walked through my door 4 years ago called Joe, and he basically applied for our kind of senior designer, sort of my right-hand man's role. And he walked through the door, and he had long hair, and he had no portfolio. And I said, you know, great, you know, where's your portfolio? And he just pulled out a memory stick and he put it into the TV in our conference room. And I was looking at like Sony and Reebok and Panasonic, you know, TV commercials and you know, and genuinely that kind of light bulb moment came on, and was that, look, we don't do this stuff, but it's the future of our industry. I said, if we can fuse our beautiful design ethic with this kind of media and motion and film production, you know, we're gonna have a great business that lots of new people are gonna want to come and engage with us with. And I think you know, I'm a massive believer, and you know, the older I've got, the more holistic I've become. But I said to Sharon that we've got to employ this guy, and she was like, well, he's not right for this role. And I said, yeah, I know, but we need to start a department that he's leading, and thank God we did, because literally I think it was 3 weeks later the Dorset Chamber asked us to be the design and production sponsor of the DBAs, and those of you who were at that night, you know, it was the proudest moment of my life. You know, we were sat at the table surrounded by this incredible experience. You know, and everybody had their moment on stage and in the light. And, you know, because I never forget it, you know, Ian said, what would you do differently? And I said, well, all the past awards that I've been to, if you don't win, you're sat on the table with the winners, but no one really, you know, excluding a company logo, no one really gets that moment on stage. So we said that was the first thing we wanted to change. And, you know, we had these beautiful kind of graphic faces exploding. And I said it was, you know, the proudest moment that I'd had outside of, you know, Kate giving birth to my son. It was incredible. But it also was that awakening of actually the business has evolved into something incredible.
And it's that evolution and keeping up with times that you think then Hall and Woodhouse, Virgin and other clients then stay with you because they can see you're moving.
100%. And print, as much as I love it, and, you know, Ben was involved in a lot of the decisions, and the minute I bought Ben out, my print director said, look, I want to start my own business. I want to separate the print company, and you can be a director of the new business, and I want to, you know, kind of take that burden away from global and you know, kind of evolve that business on my own. And I said, look, 100%, let's do it. Because I knew at that point, you know, Joe had walked through the door, and we were going to invest time and energy and money into our kind of film and motion stuff. And, you know, it goes back to that, if you genuinely believe in what you're doing, keep at it, because you know, if you've got a great team around you, you will win and you will succeed. And when you don't, sometimes, as long as you learn from that, you're doing all right, you know. So.
And you do have Sharon around you supporting you, and you have Joe, and you know, you've also got Debbie looking after you from an HR 100%,
yeah.
So you built a team around you, possibly, do you think, to replace those early days where it was you and Ben? Do you feel like you're in partnership with them, or do you feel isolated?
100%. I thankfully, you know, and this comes back from, again, talking about sport, you know, I think as a sportsman, you realise what you're good at, And it's when you try and do things you're not good at is when you actually fail, you know. And I know I'm not a numbers guy, you know. In fact, you know, I don't like dealing with the numbers, you know. I've been in many meetings with you here and looking at, you know, the end of year accounts and just going, that's great, thanks Warren, it looks good, or it doesn't. What are we going to do about it, you know? And having someone around you that does the stuff that you're not great at, that is actually great at that stuff, is, you know. And I would say to any young entrepreneur, old entrepreneur, or, you know, whatever, you know, the sooner you can employ people to do the stuff you don't like doing, the better it is for you, because it enables you to actually, you know, continue to love and do the stuff that you enjoy, and your business will flourish off the back of that.
I think you're right. So again, it just comes back to that fundamental thing about we need, as business owners and entrepreneurs and leaders, to play to our strengths, don't we? And we need to get people that cover our weaknesses.
But there are downsides to employing people, as we all know, and it's a tough world.
Don't always get it right.
You don't, and that's where, again, you know, Debbie and the team at Streetwise have been incredible for us, and I've been fortunate enough to have Debbie as a friend and kind of, you know, mentor for, God, best part of, I think it's 17, 18 years of my, you know, kind of business life. And, you know, she will support and help you through difficult situations, but she will also, you know, advise when you really need to make that decision. And, you know, as we all know, salaries are the biggest cost of most businesses, and it's a big decision to make. But if it enables you to keep doing what you love, then I would say do it every time.
And what effects have had being in business? You've talked about Alfie, you've talked about relationship with Kate. You know, what effect do you think running your own business has had on your personal and family life?
It's a difficult one, because I kind of look back and reflect, and any kind of, you know, entrepreneurial man or woman will appreciate this, that's had a business for you know, a period of time, is that your belief and your everything about you is telling you that the business is the most important thing. You've got to keep the business going to support your family, and, you know, but actually what you're doing is actually taking yourself away from that family group. And, you know, 100% to my, you know, for my situation, it had a massive impact on me, you know, and I regret not being around, you know, as much as I should have been for my son. But I actually believed I was doing the right thing, and, you know, working hard, and, you know, bringing in the money and all of that stuff, you know. But it gets to a point where you kind of realise, and I guess it's where I got a bit older, where actually the business isn't priority number one, you know. It needs to sit as priority kind of, you know, number one, but actually your health and your personal life need to sit, you know, exactly alongside that, you know, and run side by side. Because if you're not healthy and you're not fit and you're not happy, you can't run a happy and healthy and fit business, you know. And it took me a long time to work that out, you know, and actually seeing signs of stress. And again, going back to Becky, you know, if you think you're not stressed when you kind of run in your own business, and you kind of feel like you're coping, you know, the one thing I've learned is actually stress comes out in so many different ways. You know, you find yourself in crazy situations where actually it's escapism, or you know, lots of people, you know, kind of go out and party all the time, and I was guilty of that, but I felt like I was doing it to win new business, and, you know, and those that know me know that, you know, I like to be the life and soul of a party, and we'll try and, you know, keep people out as late as I can get them. But you know, and there was an element of networking and enjoying life.
But we all justify these things at times.
Exactly,
don't we?
that.
Because of because it becomes a coping.
But I also built an incredible network of friends and mentors of you that I class as, you know, one of those. And going back to, you know, advice that people gave me, you know, and it was Les Brody. He said to me, don't ever try and be someone you're not, you know, and always be yourself, because that's the true you know. And Global's kind of had that personality, is that we're not an agency that baffles clients with words and buzzwords, and, you know, actually we talk plain English and we tell it like it is. And networking can be quite daunting when people go and feel like they have to be a corporate version of themselves. You don't. Just walk into the room, be yourself.
So great advice there from Les. Do you think somewhere along the way, along your journey, you forgot who you were there? Yeah,
I would say so. I think I was trying to, and Becky will appreciate this, I was trying to live 3 lives, genuinely, you know, and it's not until you stop and kind of look down on your life, you know, and it's that kind of reflection, you know, and thankfully I had time to do that, where you realise that it's not sustainable, you know, and I was kind of leading this life of, you know, the kind of football captain and, you know, kind of lad, bar, you know, kind of living that life where you felt like you got respect for, you know, drinking a lot and going out and partying. And then also, you know, kind of running the business and networking and essentially going out and building new clients and relationships. And I guess the kind of third part of my life was the family man and the father that I guess probably got left behind a little bit by it all, you know, and it's important to find a way of bringing all of those elements of your life together, you know, and you know, I'm very lucky that I feel like I've got that now, and you know, I've moved on, and you know, Kate's an incredible mother to my son, and you know, thankfully, hopefully, we've got a good relationship still, and you know, we talk, and our son is the priority number one, you know, but I've got an incredible, you know, kind of new partner that shares a lot of my kind of creative life in Rhiannon, and she's an awesome photographer, and we've just come back from Marrakesh, and you know, kind of been inspiring each other, and we'll support each other, and you know, if I go out, I'll go out, and we have fun together and stuff like that, you know. So it's getting that kind of central life, but you need to know who you are before you can do that.
Absolutely.
And that's the tough bit. That's the journey that everyone needs to go on. And you know, God, advising someone to try and find out who they are.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm qualified for that. So.
I don't think we all ever really truly define who we are, do we? But
no.
if you get the more time you spend, trying to work out what makes you happy. Playing to your strengths
and spending some time alone, I think is, you know, when I split from Kate, I was struggling, you know, I was literally struggling, and thankfully Becky helped me through that. But you know, I think spending time on your own and reflecting on your life is you know, it's okay to be bored, and it's okay to sit there and do nothing, because that's when you start to really almost talk to yourself and reflect on actually what do you do that makes you happy, and you know, and it's important to spend time and be bored, because that's when you start to really process things in life.
It's easy to keep yourself busy and high.
Yeah, exactly. And it's deflection, isn't it? Basically, That's what it is.
So, going to end with 2 final questions. The first is, if you went back now to that guy that was pushing the trolley with the Mac on it, see that 21-year-old you, what words of advice would you give yourself as you walk through Heathrow?
Do it all again.
Hey, okay.
No, I would say to myself, don't try and pretend to be someone you're not. You know, but when you're in your 20s, you don't really know who you are. You know, but I think it's believe in what you're doing. You know, believe in what you're doing, and be passionate, and trust in the process, but also try and be kind and do the right thing. You know, I've always said to the people that work with me, and people that have left to even start their own business, I say, you know, actually always do the right thing and be kind, because this life has a funny way of bringing people back round to you just when you don't want them. You know, so I think if you try and always, whatever it is, end things on a good foot, or, you know, clients are cyclical, and we're very privileged in an agency to keep a lot of our key clients, but clients move, you know, for one reason or another, staff move, and they've got relationships, and always end, you know, relationships or client relationships on a good point. And likewise with networking, you don't have to get on with everybody. And sometimes when you kind of work with people and you network with them, you know, as you know, those relationships change and evolve, and it's okay. But, you know, actually being the bigger man and being brave about it, and going, do you know what? This didn't work out, but it's all good. We'll have a drink at some point and everything will be fine, you know, because actually that person will come back round in your life probably a year, 2 years, 10 years later, and they'll remember that. Definitely. You know, build your network up. That's probably one of the advice that I would say. And I, funny enough, I gave it to someone the other day. Get your network around you as soon as you can, and start to build that network, because, and that goes back to being yourself, because actually your vibe attracts your tribe. You can't go to a networking group and pretend to be the party guy or actually the commercial guy when you are the party. Thankfully I never really changed, and I've got a great group of kind of mentors and friends that I've got around me because they're similar to me and like doing what I do, so
your vibe attracts your tribe. I like that. So final question, always the question I end on: what does success mean to you, Darren?
Success means to me, and global, I guess, is making sure that my team are happy, when they come to work, that they're healthy, that they have fun when they work. I'd like to think that we've got that at Global, and I try and always bring a sense of fun, even when stressful situations occur. And I kind of tend to deal with stressful situations as the people that know me will with comedy, because I find it, it's
dark humour.
Yeah, literally. You've got to be able to laugh about things in life, otherwise you end up in a dark place. And I ensure that we try and make sure that we have fun, we work hard, and we look after our clients, and we genuinely care and cherish about our clients.
Good.
Yeah.
Darren, I knew I would, but I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for being a great guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
It's a pleasure. I hope everyone out there's enjoying it.
Although I should also give you the opportunity for a quick plug. So if people want to know more about you, more about Global Group, where can they go?
If they go to discoverglobal.co.uk, have a look at our site. We're doing incredible things. We've just finished a Sky TV commercial for our great clients, Coastal Bids. Worked with Paul Tansey. Paul Lovesy on that. Paul Tansey's helped me along the way in my life too. But we do TV commercials, we do promotional videos, we do great branding. Basically, if you've got a great business that wants to look and kind of promote themselves digitally or offline, then hopefully we're the place to go, and we'll have fun along the journey too. So
brilliant. Thank you, Darren.
Awesome. Thank you, Warren. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.